If you have type 2 diabetes and you're tired of being told it's chronic and something you'll just have to manage forever, if your A1C is controlled but your medication list keeps growing or stays the same, and you know deep down you're capable of more than this, you're in the right place. This is the Diabetes Remission Roadmap podcast. We're Brian Bisher and Corey Jenks, two pharmacists who spent over 2 decades inside healthcare. And we started this show because we got tired of watching capable people stuck getting managed instead of rebuilt. Here's what most people aren't told. Type 2 diabetes isn't just a blood sugar problem, it's a muscle and energy storage problem. When your body loses strength and metabolic flexibility, blood sugar rises, and you can rebuild that. On this show, we break the scripts that say more meds are inevitable, you're destined to just manage, remission isn't possible, and instead we teach you how to build muscle, eat in a way that keeps you full, and regain control of your health again. No extremes, no shame, just practical strategies to help you move toward remission and lead your health again. Let's get to work. For a long time, I thought if I could just get leaner, stronger, healthier, more disciplined, more successful, then I'd finally like the man I saw in the mirror. But that lie almost broke me. It pushed me from being overweight and out of shape in pharmacy school to becoming so obsessed with healthy that I was afraid of food, controlling what my wife ate and I ate, injured, weak, and down to 150 pounds. And the wild part is this. The real healing didn't begin when I found the perfect diet or workout plan. It began when I came to the truth that God already loved me before I fixed a single thing. You do not have to earn your worth by fixing your body. You learn to care for your body because you are already loved. Hey, welcome back to the show. I'm Brian, doing this today without Corey, as you might realize. And today I'm going to do something a little different, something I've not really done before, maybe just in bits and pieces, but I'm going to be sharing my story. And that's because I think as someone, if you're someone struggling with type 2 diabetes, it's really going to resonate and hit home. So just gonna do this because it's something I've been feeling really called to do. So I want to start from the beginning and just say for a long time I really believed that my worth was tied to how I looked and just how I performed and whether people thought about me. And that is really the one of the biggest lies that needs to be dismantled. I'm just going to tell you that right from the beginning. It needs to be dismantled. And we're going to dismantle that here in this episode. But I'll start with this. It also doesn't, I would not have probably said it like that at the time. I probably would have said like, hey, I want to look like the guy in Men's Health magazine and be ripped, like have a six pack, or I don't want acne anymore. I think that would be great. I want other people to think I'm cool. I want to fit in. And those are not bad goals. Like we inherently want to fit in as like as a humans. That's like part of our survival. Like we just know we want to fit in. Also, although I'll say these are not great goals because they are outcome based and they're not really behavior system based, like I really believe are important now. Um, but yeah, underneath it all, like there was something much deeper going on. I was living this lie that my worth was tied to my performance and what other people thought about me and the goals and the outer achievements. And I thought like once I got those outcomes, I would finally feel good about myself. I finally would feel worthy. Um, but here's what I really learned is that shame can only push you for a little while, this shame and discontent with where you're at, but it's never and it cannot build lasting freedom. So where was I? My roots, I was born and raised Catholic. My faith was, people will say this, cradle Catholic. I, for whatever reason, do not like terms that just, anyways, like when you say things like cradle Catholic, it's a term that I don't really like to use, but that's what people will say. My faith was basically inherited. I wasn't really chosen. My parents chose to baptize me into the Catholic faith, and I had, they were very loving and involved. My dad is very playful and has been for a very long time. I feel like I get that from him, like the playfulness I have now with my two sons, like the wrestling with them, in the basement, playing tackle playing little tykes basketball in the basement with them. Although my dad would play on his knees, my sons don't mean play on my knees, so I have to really take back the intensity a little bit when you're so much bigger than them. It's trying not to like hurt them when you're playing on your feet. And then I love playing hide and seek with my daughter. So like yeah, the playfulness part of me is just really shown as a parent, and I love it. Got it from my dad. Um, but there was a deeper part of my story that took me a long time to understand, going back and just having conversations with my parents, you realize like the impact something like a trauma can have on them. So uh, let's just say like my parents, I was not their firstborn. They lost their son right before me. And yeah, grief will definitely impact you negatively. And it affects the way you can show up emotionally. Like it affects like um, how, present you can really feel and be in those moments, like when you're grieving. And so, yeah, my parents went through a really, really tough time, and I don't blame them for anything like at all. Obviously, they did the best that they could in that circumstance. I don't even want to imagine being in those shoes. And I'm really, really grateful that God helped my parents heal and that I was able to come to know the Father's love through my father's own love. So I will say like that when when infants or babies are so young, like I learned later on, is that a lot of the nervous system and like the feelings of worth are shaped at such an early age that I can kind of speculate maybe it's like that trauma my parents went through that like was then translated to me, and so like that was just kind of passed down. Like we know trauma is passed down. So um yeah, basically I can see like how some of that struggle with self-worth, some of my struggle with self-worth started very, very early before I would even maybe have realized it. Grew up in the 90s, so classic 90s diet, low fat, high carb, high sugar, great marketing, Captain Crunch for breakfast. I look forward to it every day. It was delicious, probably still is. I just haven't eaten in a while. Um, and yeah, like I said, lots of good marketing, lots of good commercials. I don't blame my parents whatsoever for having the food in the house that they did. They still cooked a lot of good home cooked meals. My mom, the fact that we ate dinner together as a family pretty much every night, like has inspired me to carry forward that tradition. So we do cook a lot of our meals. But basically, like, kind of lesson here is like the food environment we grew up in shapes us so much. Like, it shapes our beliefs around food, shapes our taste buds, our preferences. And that's why I really have a lot of compassion for people who say like they think they're doing a good job, they think they're eating healthy, or maybe they struggle to really like certain foods. And it's because some of this is just rooted so young, at such a young age that we didn't really have a lot of control over what was being fed to us so much. Like, and we really tie a lot of experiences and feelings and emotions to the food we were born with and raised with. So yeah, all that though, like naturally as a boy, like you go through hormones, they hit, and acne became a real painful part of my life. A really just part of my story. My face was just, I had probably what we call cystic acne, and it wasn't didn't just doesn't just affect your skin. I mean, it was very painful, but it also like affects like your self-image, how you walk in a room, whether you want to be seen, whether you really want to go out and be with friends. Like it makes you feel more guarded, more self-conscious, and just more tuned into how other people see you. Although you're probably way more thinking about it than I was probably thinking about it way more than other people actually were thinking about it. Now that I've grown up and realized that, like people are really more concerned with themselves than other people, however other people look. But all that to say, like without even really knowing it, I was starting to tie my worth to my appearance, and becoming more self-conscious. And so moving on, like through high school years, I definitely was more isolated, didn't have a huge number of friends, and it was a really tough time for me. Things started to change though in college when I moved, like lived on campus back and forth a little bit, but made friends with some people in my classes, but definitely fell into the trap of socializing and alcohol and using that to really rely heavily on to loosen me up and become social. And it was just really obviously it's a way to become someone you didn't really feel like you could be. And so it's a way to like step out of your comfort zone. And I really relied that on that heavily as a crutch. And at the same time, I was as you naturally as you move away from your parents in that controlled environment, you naturally start to develop your own routines um and I felt started falling away from practicing my faith. When I was taken out of the routine of and structure of going to a Catholic school and living at home, I didn't make going to church a priority uh, anymore at that time. And it was just everything kind of compounded growing in the pharmacy school. Ironically, I became probably the unhealthiest I'd ever been in pharmacy school. was a lot more social, even more socializing. There was more stress packed on top of a heavy workload. I was working more, throwing the thick crust pizza that was free every single week at all these meetings. And I got up to 220 pounds, which for me was a lot, like way more than I ever was, like at my heaviest in high school. And I was really out of shape. Did not help the way I saw myself. I was not happy just with how I was living and who I was becoming. So it, I can't pinpoint the exact like spot in pharmacy school, but I did start to work on my health a little bit. I think I started going to the gym a little bit, although I would say I definitely fell into the comparison trap initially in college, going to the gyms and seeing all these guys that were just like way more muscular than me. They looked like just, I mean, they were probably football players, a lot of athletes. I knew I did not know what I was doing in a gym. I never really learned how to lift in high school. So it was definitely a skill I did not have, and I was very uncomfortable in that environment. Uh, so so yeah, then you pair like I fell into the comparison trap um, of just comparing myself to their results that I did not have, and wanting that and envying it, and that's not a good thing to be in that place of envy. So yeah, it can't pinpoint exactly when started things started to turn around, but I did start to exercise a little more. I think I probably ate a little healthier because I was losing weight, but nothing really shifted until I graduated and I saw just how bad chronic illness was like in real life. Like working in the hospital, people were suffering. The system that I was working in just was not designed to prevent or get to the root cause of anything. It was mostly band-aid approaches, prescriptions, people coming in, getting treated, getting discharged home. The providers were burnt out, the other workers were burnt out. I don't blame them because you can only do so much to help people in this environment that it just didn't really uh, position me to feel like I was truly helping people, what to give them what they actually needed, which was like hope and health for a better future. So that's when I realized like the real work needs to happen outside of the walls of the hospital. And at some point, I began to think to myself, like, this many people should not be this sick. Like, what is going on here? And I then got a little bit deeper into my own health journey when I was working at the hospital one day and just finally had like a breaking point of like, why am I always hungry in the morning? Like I Googled it. I was frustrated because I was trying to do like the weightlifting thing, like I said, and I was following like the advice online to like eat certain things in the morning and like eat like 6 meals a day to try to put on weight. But I was just like constantly hungry to the point of it being annoying, and I could not focus at work. I was tired all the time. And so, yeah, I went to Google naturally, and I came upon this whole blog on intermittent fasting, and it just made so much sense. I was like, as I was reading it, I'm sitting here thinking like, why wasn't I taught any of this in pharmacy school? I was kind of mad that I paid that much tuition to go to pharmacy school and I wasn't taught any of this stuff. Like, I was taught about some of the things that like the guy was talking about, but like it was never presented to me the way that this guy did on this blog. And so I was like, wow, I'm just really curious now. Like, so it got me into a big hole of like, well, I'm gonna try this. Like, this makes so much sense with insulin and hunger hormones, like the ghrelin, leptin, like all the hormone signaling that was going on when I was constantly eating just made so much sense that I was like, I just gotta give this a try. And so I started doing faster workouts, more protein. I started feeling and looking the best I'd ever in my life. Like I started experimenting with Whole 30, like elimination diets, like keto, paleo, new training styles, working out more, getting more comfortable in the gym. And I started changing. So a lot of my habits were starting to really shift towards more positive ones. The problem was that my foundation, which I was building those on, had not yet shifted. So I was still I was pursuing health, but my pursuit of health got rigid and I became afraid of food to the point of I had to pass everything through a filter of like, is it healthy? Is it not healthy? Is it gonna hurt me? Is it bad for me? And led me to controlling like what my wife and I ate, almost to the point of like just being detrimental to our relationship. I thought I was protecting her inherently, providing her accountability, but she felt controlled and she was right. Side note, don't be your spouse's food accountability partner. We talked about this previous episode because you're just gonna like what I had done was I just traded one prison for another. I was in these negative, destructive habits with drinking and eating a bunch of processed food to now habits of that were leading me towards more fear and control. And that's when I started learning this lesson. And this was definitely slow and definitely the hard way, is that doing things because you think you should, it leads to shame. But doing things because you see them as a gift, it changes everything. And when you start seeing yourself uh, inherently having that worth without any of the outcomes, and you start doing things because you already love yourself, not in order to love yourself, that's when the major shift changes. So I'll say that again. When you start making changes out of love for yourself instead of to have love for yourself, to love yourself, essentially, I need to change to love myself, then that's when the shift really happens. I realized I do not have to work out. I get to move the body that God gave me. I do not have to eat well to prove I'm good and have a lean body. I get to nourish my body because it matters. I do not have to be perfect with my habits. I get to practice stewardship with grace and compassion. And I was definitely not there yet, but that truth was waiting for me later on after a little bit of a probably I thought I was at the after, and this was after like a valley here. So COVID hit, gym shut down. Naturally, I had to, just like everyone else, had to adjust, work out at home. Didn't really have the equipment for that. Didn't really have the know-how. Lost a lot of strength, and I can't remember how long that went on, but I was like starting to feel uh, like my self-esteem was taking a hit because I wasn't as strong, I wasn't as big. So I went back to the gym, tried to lift way too much, way too fast, gave myself what I realize now was a hiatal hernia, and that led to me having the worst acid reflux of my life. It affected my vocal cords. I couldn't talk more than 5 minutes without it just being painful. I couldn't eat without experiencing bloating and days of not being able to go to the bathroom. I lost even more muscle. I got down to like a sickly and gaunt looking like 150 pounds. I was weak, frustrated, and definitely scared. And I've been married now for like a year plus, and we had our first son through all this. Um, but it would just felt like I was going through the routine, like motions, like um, yeah, we had so I had started basically the point being is like we had started kind of reintroducing like a faith life, going to church more routinely, but I was definitely still going through the routine and the motions of doing it because I had to do it, not because I wanted to, and I definitely wasn't getting much out of it. So I didn't really have a whole lot of like a prayer life outside of going to church, and really nothing to help me make sense of the pain and suffering I was going through. But thank God, healing came eventually, and I found help through a functional medicine practitioner online, which that's why like, maybe online helping is something I can do. But I found help through a functional medicine practitioner who was doing this online, and he just helped guide me through the changes I needed to make, the calming of my nervous system, like the maneuvers for the hiatal hernia he likely suspected, um, and just like the food and the workouts, like what I had to do to really just let my body recover. And like just over time, gradually, I started to heal. I started to, and it was not just physical, it was mental and spiritual, although I had not really put the pieces together yet. I'll get to that in a moment. I started to see myself differently and loving myself. And I realized again, like when you change the way you see yourself and you change the way you see your actions and you start making these actions out of love and not in order to have love and be accepted, that's when you start to really shift and change everything. You see the inherent worth and love and everything else around you too. And again, I realized my body was a gift to steward because I was already loved. And that really changed everything for me because health no longer was about proving myself. It was about receiving God's love and responding with gratitude. My love for Him, my love for my family, and having love for my neighbor, and yes, love for myself. So that's why today, like, I love, I really enjoy leading retreats for couples who are getting married. I've led a retreat for a men's like renewal weekend. And yeah, I really love seeing and helping people get past this limiting belief, this lie that kind of holds them back, that they don't have to, in order to feel worthy, they have to have these similar outcomes. So, and I'll just say this, that the gospel cuts through all of it. And now that's something I'm working on being able to share, is understanding that, like, as much as health and fitness, I want to be able to understand what the gospel is and how to involve that and intertwine that with helping people in their health and fitness journey. So just as I learn to understand that, it starts with this essentially. Like, if you kind of simplify what that is that understanding that God loves you first, before the weight loss, before better labs, before medication reduction, before perfect habits, even though there are no such thing as perfect habits, God loves you first. And sin disrupts that. And sin does not always look like we expect. For me, sin looked like envying the way other people looked. It looked like using alcohol to escape insecurity. It looked like making food and fitness an idol, something I depended on to feel worthy. It looked like controlling my wife's choices because I had confused protection with pride. It looked like chasing health so obsessively that I stopped trusting God with the outcome and surrendering my life to His outcome, His will for me. And that's how sin works. It takes good things, health, discipline, protecting our families, and twists them into something that separates us from ourselves, from each other, and from God. But the good news is Jesus restores what we cannot fix on our own. He reminds us that our worth is received, not achieved. He calls us to repent, which does not mean self-hatred. It means to turn around, to reorient, and come back home. And for me, coming back home meant receiving the Holy Spirit more intentionally, leaning into the church as a family, and getting more out of it than just going there and just going through the motions. It meant being involved in my community. It meant giving back to others. And yeah, it meant like learning that I was not supposed to do this all alone. And it meant learning how to pray and um, and actually have conversations with God and have in those moments. Because yeah, willpower alone is not enough. Like, discipline is alone is not enough. We need grace. We need that community. We need people who call us higher without crushing us and bringing us down. And then when God heals something in us, as He has with me, He invites us to use that healing to help others. And that is discipleship. That's a big part of why I do what I do now. I now I like this motto I heard yesterday, that I'm a billboard for the Lord, is that I want to be that billboard, and I want to, part of what we're called to do is evangelize. And maybe that's what this platform is. In addition to dispensing hope and health, dispense uh, spiritual hope and health too. And so I'm in a much better place holistically now. I'm not afraid of food. As Corey would like to say, yummy food. I am now on board with, sometimes in the appropriate times, my kids, my family, having pizza, ice cream, getting some hometown chili. It all can fit without owning you. We focus though mainly on nutritious, satiating foods at home that help us show up for each other and be healthy. And we do focus on those and make those a core value of our home, but they're not like obsessive, and it's not in like a shameful way. With my kids, like I said, I want them to understand what food is and what like processed food can do to a body and like a brain, and makes you really want to overeat it, and it's designed to make you overeat it. And it's not something to rely on. It's something to be definitely respected and understood. So that way you can do what's necessary to not let it just take control of your life, because that's essentially what it can do, is it can take control of your life if you are defenseless, if you don't have defaults and systems in place. Um, But yeah, right now, like I'm working out at home, like we talk about on this podcast, doing the steady strengthening workouts. It's just what fits in the season. Don't go to a gym. Maybe I'll get back to one someday. Um, Doing more walking and rucking with my dogs. Yeah, Corey has definitely thankful. I'm thankful he showed me rucking because it's definitely a way better alternative than running. I'm not a runner. I'm not a fan of running. I much prefer rucking. Let's just put it that way. And that's basically, if you're not familiar with what that is, it's like putting uh heavy weight on your back, going out and walking. Although I will say I have a ways to go before I get to Corey's level. I was out visiting him a couple months ago and he had 45 pounds on his back. I had nothing. And he was like just booking it. And I was like, dude, wait up. Like I can't keep up. And although I would say I had barefoot shoes on, he did not. So maybe that just propelled him a little bit more. I really do think barefoot shoes, you have to work. There has to be more effort put into each step because you're not getting that bounce. You don't have that angle pushing yourself forward. So that's what at least what I'm saying at this moment. So uh yeah, so all right, so Brian, what does this mean for me? Like, what does your story have to do with my battle, my struggle with type 2 diabetes, my A1C, my meds, my weight, my habits? Well, I'll say this. It has everything to do with it because if you believe your worth depends on your A1C or your food log or your blood sugar readings, your continuous glucose monitor readings, your doctor's approval, then every setback you will feel like you're having an identity crisis. High blood sugar reading will not just be information, it will feel like condemnation. A missed workout will not just be a missed workout, it will feel like proof that you always fail. An imperfect meal plan will not just be an imperfect meal, it'll just become shame and a cycle that leads you into further eating foods that are not aligned with your goals. But when you start from love, as I've said before many times, and I'm going to repeat this until it just is ingrained in your brain. When you start from the truth that you are already worthy and loved, you can tell the truth without collapsing under it. You can say, my blood sugar is high, but I'm not broken. I missed a workout, but I'm not a failure. I need to change, but I do not need to hate myself into it. God gave me this body, and I get to care for it. That is a completely different foundation. And that foundation is what makes lasting change actually possible. Because I've lived both sides. I've lived unhealthy and out of control. I've lived overly controlled and afraid. And by God's grace alone, I'm learning a better way. A way of strength with grace, discipline without shame, health without obsession, food without fear, and stewardship without self-hatred. So here's what I want you to leave with is you do not have to earn your worth by fixing your body. You are made in the image and likeness of your creator. You have inherent self-worth. You are already loved, and because you're already loved, you can channel that love to act accordingly with treating your body like it matters, because it does. Your body matters, your family matters, your future matters, and your purpose matters. All they all matter. Your health is not just about a number on a lab report. It is about becoming strong enough, free enough, and grounded enough to live the life God is calling you to live. So stop trying to shame yourself into change. Start with the truth. You are loved. You are not broken. And with the right plan, the right compassion and support, and the grace to keep going, you can begin again. If anything I shared today resonated with you, if you've been living in a cycle of shame, frustration, or just feeling stuck with your blood sugar and your meds, I want to offer you something real. We do a call with people in your situation. It's called a diabetes medication exit strategy call. It's not a sales pitch. It's genuinely a conversation where we just sit down, look at where you're at right now, figure out what's actually keeping you stuck with your blood sugar, whether that's your diet, your medications, your mindset, your habits, and just we help you get closer and clear on what the real problem is and what's possible for you. A lot of people walk away from that call with more clarity than they've had in years, just from the conversation alone. And yes, if it makes sense, we'll talk about whether the Type 2 transformation program could be a fit, but only if it's the right move for you. That's not what the call is about. If you want to book that call, the link is in the show notes. I'd love to connect with you. If this episode gave you clarity or hope, share it with one friend who's been stuck in the diabetes trap. That's how this mission grows. One person, one family, one story at a time. And if you haven't yet, leaving a quick review helps more people find the show and realize they're not stuck with meds forever. It takes less than a minute and it means the world to us. Thanks for being here, and thanks for being part of this movement toward freedom. Thanks for listening to the Diabetes Remission Roadmap. The ideas discussed here are for general informational purposes only and do not constitute medical or nutritional advice. We are pharmacists, but we're not your personal healthcare providers. Always consult your own physician or qualified clinician before changing medications, exercise routines, or nutrition plans. Results vary, and what works for one person may not work for another.